So we've got some pretty unbelievable news overnight. And it looks, just as we think, okay, maybe tensions are going to start to tamp down a little bit, maybe with sanctions and all of these other things, maybe things are going to get pulled back a little bit. No, it's going the opposite direction. And now, of course, there's the pressure from Vladimir Zelensky in Ukraine calling on Western allies and NATO allies to send heavier weapons. We will not give up our land. We want to take back Crimea. And yet this is not how this is going to end. The way that this is going to end is with Russia taking over the eastern part of Ukraine, controlling the Donbass, and who knows what happens with Vladimir Zelensky, and who knows what happens with the western part of Ukraine. But overnight, we've got some heated words from Vladimir Putin. Let's put this up on the screen. World War III has already started. This is one of a television personality in Russia, basically saying, hey, we're already here. A Russian One broadcaster, Olga Skapovia, I'm saying that wrong, effectively declared war on the West. And Vladimir Putin also, so she's basically, I guess, echoing what the Kremlin is saying, which is that Russia is sounding alarm of a direct conflict with the United States if we continue to send additional weapons to that region, specifically ones that are long range and could actually strike Russia. So here's the headline. The U.S. is on Russia sounds alarm on risk of direct conflict with the United States. The U.S. is on a collision course with Russia by sending rocket launchers to Kiev, a top diplomat claims. Washington's arming of Ukraine with heavier weapons increases the risk of direct U.S.-Russia confrontation, regardless of American statements about mitigating such a possibility. This is coming from Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov, said on Wednesday. And then, of course, this is all around this decision to send supply HIMARS, multiple rocket launchers, to Ukraine. Washington is saying that the weapon systems will not allow Ukrainian forces to attack Russia directly. And then it says, hey, it's just allowing you to basically, allowing them to hit them in the Donbass region, right, in eastern Ukraine. We were laughing about this earlier today because the weapon system that the White House is basically now saying they're going to send
is medium range, is what they were saying. So on Monday, when Biden was asked, will you send long range missiles into Ukraine with the potential to fire inside of Russian borders, he said no. It was a flat no, right? To which Russian officials said, good decision, because we are looking at actually what they said was, if Russian cities are attacked, we will retaliate over where those decisions are made. And that doesn't mean Kiev, right? So that is a veiled threat to, we know those decisions are made in Washington. We will attack the source of these decisions if this happens. And then just today now, the White House is saying, well, we're looking at sending medium range. And I was texting to Clayton, I said, this is like a Goldie Locks of how the size of the missiles, right? This one's too big, this one's too small, this one's just right. What is the size of a missile that is just right, which will not bring retaliation onto American shores? We're sort of playing with that right now. We're playing like a combat board game.
It's hilarious to look at, okay, so you're going to be angry if we send long range ones, of course, because that would hit inside of Russia. And there's already been plenty of reports of attacks inside of Russian territory. But now we have Biden sending medium range. So just enough where we'll be able to hit inside the Donbass region and hit your troops there. So, I mean, at what point does Putin just call your bluff and say enough is enough? I mean, that appears to be what's happening on the Russian side of things, which is, look, you continue to send this shit.
Yes.
You keep sending all these weapons. You keep funneling this in. We've warned you. At what point do they actually finally make good on this warning?
Well, because, and we know this from the Mueller report and through the Trump years, right, that the United States has been sending weaponry and money for a long time. That was at the heart of the Trump impeachment. The first one, right, was the fact that Trump wanted to hold up this aid in exchange for blah, 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 right? So it tells us that this has been a modus operandi for a very long time. So when will Russia consider this an escalation? And when will they say, okay, we know you've been doing this for a while. This is sort of how it's been. we've been letting this slide, and then when, right? When is that inflection point that it no longer slides?
Right. So the White House press secretary was asked about this, Karine Jean-Pierre. She was asked about this yesterday about these weapons, and isn't this going to elevate things? I thought we weren't going to send heavy weapons. And then and the president came out with an opinion piece in the New York Times. We'll get to that in a second on what I will and will not do in Ukraine. So we'll go through what the president just released in the New York Times, which is actually pretty amazing. But here is Karine Jean-Pierre answering this question. Take a listen.
Can you offer some clarity on what President Biden meant when he said we're not sending Ukraine rocket systems that could strike into Russia, since even short-range missiles could fly over the border if they're fired nearby? And is the White House concerned that sending a rocket system could be considered escalatory?
So let me first say that those systems continue to be under consideration, so I don't have anything to preview on anything specific there. But as the president said, we won't be sending long-range rockets for use beyond the battlefield in Ukraine. But right now, I don't have anything to preview for you today.
So the long-range shit, that's still on the table. So I don't have anything I don't have any previews. I don't have any trailers for you to see them today. We might end up sending them, but right now the missiles that we're going to send are only for the battlefield in Ukraine. That's it. So that's all we're going to send. I mean, what a little delicate tap dance they're trying to do here. So President Biden comes out with this piece in the New York Times. By the way, just as a little point on this. So yesterday, the president released an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal about what he plans to do on inflation, which is to stay totally focused. That's his primary concern, is battling inflation. And then he takes time out of his day to pen an entire opinion piece about the war in Ukraine. So his focus is still on inflation, I guess, right? So then he tells us in a New York Times piece a day later, in an opinion piece. I mean, I wonder what opinion pages are going to be left after this. He's just like writing opinion pieces all day right now. So here he is in the New York Times. President Biden, what America will and will not do in Ukraine.
Yes, and he says pretty much everything that we have just talked about from his spokesperson. He will not send long-range missiles to strike beyond the battlefield in Ukraine. He will not move to oust Putin. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you said it. Oust Putin.
That's very unsatisfying. It sounds wrong the way I said it, but he will not move to bring about regime change, and he will not support a NATO war. Right? That's what he's saying, because.
Okay, well now we've gotten it in print.
Yes, right. But again, when you write a check to support something, you are, in fact, involved in something.
Yeah, that's
right?
a great point. Like, yeah, I'm not going to stand for Black Lives Matter doing the things they do, but at the same time, I'm writing you a check. It's like, well, how do you square those two things? I'm going to send, and so I'm going to send $40 billion, and then on top of that, today we're sending you another $700 million, which include these medium-range weapons as part of this new $700 million package. So you just signed a $40 billion package last week, and then quietly, you unilaterally just pushed forward another $700 million package without anyone even lifting a hand to say, wait a minute, what are we doing? You just why not just round it up to $1 billion?
Well, the piece reads very cleanly, like, we can have what we want. It's going to go our way. Don't worry. I have compartmentalized what we will and will not do. And it's on lock, right? It's a set it and forget it. It's like curlers you wear overnight. Just don't worry. Everything can be a hair analogy if you want it to be. So it reads very disingenuous, because if in fact your most important goal is to combat inflation, you will no longer spend things that are not the priority of the American people.
So he says, as President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine has said, ultimately this war will only definitively end through diplomacy. Well, we could have told you that. Like, it's going to end through diplomacy. So, but the fact of the matter is, it's going to end the way that Henry Kissinger basically said it should end, which is you're going to have to give up the eastern region of Ukraine that's not under your control anyway and doesn't actually want to be under your control. You're not going to reclaim Crimea. That's not something that Vladimir Putin is going to allow to happen. So you might as well just get that out of your head. And the United States, Mark Milley admitting that, look, if we put ships in the Black Sea, that's a provocation that we can't really walk back. So it appears to me, at least from the United States side of this, if you're reading the tea leaves here, that they're pulling, it seems to me that they're, I don't want to say caving, but it appears to be that they're blinking. Is that maybe the right way to say it?
I guess because in the Department of Defense press conference just 2 days ago, Lloyd Austin used the term, we want to strengthen their hand, right? And so I guess it does seem that we're just trying to make it seem that they can give up less. That's sort of how I interpret it, right?
Right.
Like, because if we don't, Russia will take even more, right? If this is truly a negotiation and Russia comes and says, I want 30% of your land, and we could just take it, right? If they believe that to be the case. But if Russia sort of calculates that we could safely get 15%, then we've strengthened their hand. Then that is the negotiation table. But we had not heard things like this before. We were told from the Western media and from the White House that Ukraine is winning, Ukraine will reign supreme with our help. We are supporting this winning side. And so now I guess we're all supposed to stomach a different type of truth, which, we can. I think collectively we can. We're adults here, right? We can say stop war, and this is what the new borders look like.
Yeah, but if they're going to continue to send heavy weapons, you're hearing it right from Russia that this is World War III. Like any further escalation, like if you're going to send these HIMARS weapons, you're going to send any of these things that are going to reach our lands. Like that's a risk of such a development and an escalation that you should be prepared for. So Russia hasn't really held back from sticking to its guns, so to speak. They've kind of told us what they're going to do just around it, basically at every turn through this. Right?
Yes.
And I've said it before, we heard from Sergei Lavrov the other day and talks about this provocation and talks about this escalation, that this is going to be something you're not going to want to do. At what point then do they actually pull the trigger and do something to the United States through some sort of an attack? Like how many times do you whack a hornet's nest? And to me, this is as close as possible. And this is, again, flies in the face of everything President Biden told us he wouldn't do. Putting these types of weapons in there is World War III. He told us this.
Yes.
And we've done exactly that. We've put in aircraft. Okay, we've put in aircraft. We've put in drones. We put in all sorts of things. Right. This is World War III, and you're hearing it from the Russian press now. And so I don't know. It sounds a little bit disjointed at the moment. Washington saying one thing, Russia saying something else, and you hope that cooler heads prevail because you're playing around with, right now you're playing around with lives. You're playing around with nuclear war is basically what you're doing. This is what we're facing right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how are we as civilians supposed to know what the threshold is, right? We're just told to go along with it. Like, oh, we'll send this care package. It's okay. We won't be retaliated upon. We'll send this care package. It's okay. It's going to wreck our economy, but that's fine, right?
Right.
You're okay. It's very hard to know what the calculations are because they don't seem to be anything that we get a say in.
Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. We've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.